Jodie Rocco comes on now. You know her by now. One of the twin backup female backup singers of Milli Vanilli. She has a lot to say, and let's just get right to her. Jodie, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me again, Adam.
Okay, no Milli Vanilli or even music talk this time. You want to respond to the piece that is a couple years old that Laura Loomer retweeted something or tweeted something about. That was her New York City is deadly or a graveyard for ovaries, and the article she's referring to, which people know about by now, and let's give people full information. You are a mother, so not your situation, and No,
but I've lived around the world a little bit.
Yes.
I lived overseas for almost half of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's geographic when she says that New York is an ovary graveyard. Well, that's the city you're in. Vegas is not that way. Neither is San Francisco. Neither is, Chicago might be. But I think it's demographic and geographic. The girl she talks about is a British girl. If you think of the British mentality, old maid comes from the 17th century, because if you weren't married and had kids by the time you were 12, you were considered, off the market, not available no man would ever want you if you were older than that.
Did girls even reach puberty by 12 back then? Because I read something one time that is diet related, and like before World War II in Japan, it was average age of puberty was like 16 because they had all the fish and vegetables in the diet. So I think maybe you mean like 15 or so.
Maybe in Japan. No, because if you look at, Mary Queen of Scots, married at 11, 12, already having conjugal,
really?
sexual relations. Oh, absolutely. A lot of these girls were considered old maids if they weren't married and having kids by the time they were, 13, 14.
Be right
the average girl.
That'll fit right in with the Muslim takeover over there. Yeah.
But think about it. Menstruation usually starts between 10 and 13. So any time between that time, I was 11.
In these days, I'm just thinking like things were different back then because they didn't have as much fat in the diet. But that's maybe just one study.
Well, I keep in mind that the lifespan of a lot of people, was in the late 20s, early 30s. Most of these monarchs were dead by the time they were 24, 25. I mean, you have to think of it that way too. Well, because they were also, constantly trying not to be poisoned by other people.
That could be part of the problem.
Right, but I go back then of course you've got Catherine de Medici, who was 70, had 10 kids, was married already 15 years before she had her first child. She couldn't have kids. So, you go from one extreme to the other. But let's get back to the girl in the article. The girl in the article was 19 years old, living in Britain, and her idea of the right man was obviously, kind of flawed, because love should have no boundaries. So I think when you put in selfishness, I think selfishness has a lot to do with why she is so unhappy right now.
Do you think it was
she
that, or do you
think
settle? It was
she refused to settle.
It was just she was skewed about what she wanted. She wanted what will impress people, like the title, like a blue collar guy just wasn't going to be as high status.
She wanted a guy with a job.
He had
a guy with a job.
Okay, well you can't blame her for that.
Well, he didn't have the kind of. He didn't have women. Look, if I'm with a guy who doesn't have a job, or he's in between jobs, and I just don't know if that's something, that if he was studying and he was in law school, or he was in some school, some trade school, trying to further himself, and you have to, help him support. That's a whole different story. That's not what this situation was. Mm-hmm. This guy basically was lacking in motivation. He was lacking in areas, although he was a wonderful man. There's that fine line. Do you want love and happiness and children and the white picket fence, or do you want to climb the social ladder? You have to make that distinction. That's every person has to make that distinction. For me, I want love. I want love in a relationship. I want respect. I want harmonious. I want a harmonious family life. If you're making, you have to put it on a scale. If you're making, $1 million a year, are you happy? Because if you're not, that money means nothing.
Yeah, her story she lost, some of the years didn't add up in there. Like, she could have found another guy in her early 30s.
She found other guys. She found other guys. She had relationships for 3 years, 4 years. Why did she never commit?
Wait. here's the deal. Okay, let's not beat around the bush. You know, like you have 80s songs of your own, and there was a big song in the 80s, Keep Your Hands to Yourself. I said I wasn't going to bring up music, but I am. By Georgia Satellites, and it's no huggy, no kissy until you get a wedding ring. I can't resist with you. But they said he says, that's when she told me the story about free milk and a cow, and she said, no huggy, no kissy. What's up with girls giving it away for free for like a year? I'm sorry. If I had a daughter, I know guys can be in relationships and not think about it. Guys and women are different. Why are you wasting your time? And you grew up religious too. What are you doing with a guy more than 2 months who there might not be a future with, who even isn't sure at that point?
I wouldn't. See, there's a difference between me and a lot of other women. There's no gray area for me when it comes to a relationship. You either do or you don't. When the only man I lived with 2 guys. The first one I was going to marry, and I didn't, and I was young, and I left, and I was smart. I'm glad I did. It was the best decision I ever made. He was older than I was, much older than I was, and I was happy I made that decision because I had no business making it in the first place to decide to move in. The second time, I was 28 when I got married.
Okay,
so,
not that old, but not that young either.
Not that young. And I was already pretty big in the music industry at that time. I was, already on tour and, making money and had my own businesses. I owned.
That was a little after Milli Vanilli, right?
That was before Milli Vanilli.
Before Milli Vanilli. I didn't want to age you.
That was before Milli Vanilli. Milli Vanilli happened when I was 31. Okay. Or 30, around there. So it was after that. And when I got married, I knew that he was the one. I met him. I got engaged 6 months or 2 months later or 3 months, whatever, and I got married. Within that year, I was married. We were married 5 years before we had kids.
Oh.
Smart decision.
You had kids in your mid to late 30s? Mid-30s? Yes,
my youngest child I had when I was 36.
Oh, okay. Wow. So they wouldn't have looked back on you too fondly. They wouldn't have thought too much of you in 17th century Britain.
No, I would have been considered an old maid.
Yeah, definitely by that point. Any
right.
final
Well, my
thoughts?
mother got married at 28 as well, by the way,
and you're
in
Italian,
1957.
You're Italian-Lebanese, so that's really
Italian-Lebanese.
Back then. Yeah.
Very much so.
Got to let you go in like 20 seconds. Any final thoughts about that article or anything Laura said?
I want to know how the hell she got a verified Twitter page. I've been trying for over a year. It's so frick-fracking difficult to do that. So I was on her Twitter page. I was looking at that. While I was reading this article, I disagree with the ovary graveyard. I think it's what you make it. If you don't like it, leave the city. Go somewhere else. Because I think the demographic, the geographic has a lot to do with it.
Great having you on, as always, Jodie. People can follow you on Facebook, and it's Jodie.
Facebook at Jodie Rocco, Jodie.
Yep.
Rocco.
And on Twitter as well. Great having you on,
Jodie.
We've been talking to Jodie Rocco of Milli Vanilli.